welcome back to my channel. My name is Tia if you don't already know me, and I have been traveling in my combi van for the last year and a half. Today I'm going to do a video that's a little bit different to what I normally post. I thought it would be cool just to talk to you guys about our experiences living in a van for the last year and a half. I know that a lot of the time on social media and in photos and videos it can look like this perfect life that's so dreamy and amazing, but I think it's also important to share what it's actually like. So I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but I'm just gonna start talking and sharing our journey, and I'm probably gonna miss quite a few things because it has been a year and a half full of adventures and full of many experiences. I hope you enjoy this video and let me know what you think, and let's get to it. Hey Zenna. That sun just came out and it's really bright. So let's go back right to the beginning. It was October 2019 when we finally decided to just go for it, leave for our trip. There was never gonna be a time that was 100% perfect to leave, and we kind of knew that, so we decided to just go. Because our lease was up in October, that's why we went then, and we decided to do the West Coast first before the summer months hit. We packed everything up, got rid of so much stuff, and we're so relieved when we finally hit the road. A few weeks in, the biggest heat wave I have ever experienced hit the West Coast. This was at the same time as the fires on the east coast of Australia were happening, so you can imagine the whole country was just really hot. And not only hot, but it was so windy. I think the winds were coming off the desert, making really crazy weather patterns. And anytime we drive up the coast, so there's one main road that goes up Western Australia, and anytime we'd have a driving day, it literally felt like we were going to blow off the road. So I was so scared every time we were going to have a long drive. Not only that, but like I said, it was really hot as well, and we don't have aircon in our van, so you can imagine this would be pretty uncomfortable. With the heat and the wind, we also had some struggles with our power. So we had purchased a $200 foldable solar panel, and we thought there would be no issues with this to charge all of our gear and power our fridge. There's sun every day on the West Coast, so you can see why we didn't think this would be an issue. The solar connects to an auxiliary battery which charges everything, and you're not supposed to take your battery below 50% charge. I think within the second week we had completely killed our battery and we had to go purchase a new one. So we were in Geraldton, we ended up buying 2 batteries so that we'd have enough power. And for the next month, like the entire West Coast, this just didn't work and we had no power. So we would struggle to even keep our phones charged, and we didn't really use our fridge as much as we could have if we had power. We'd turn it off every night. It was just always an issue. Our food would go off. It was very frustrating. So the first month of our trip was all just learning curves, like dealing with the heat. We'd just try and find shade every day. That was our mission. We were just like, we just need shade, we need a shower because it was so hot. And then dealing with the wind on the coast, like you to go to explore, but it was just so windy. But we pushed through and we made it 4 weeks into our trip dealing with all these issues. But what we did was we went from Perth up to Shark Bay. We had already been to Broome and Exmouth, so we decided not to take the van up there this time. And then we came back down the coast. On the way down the coast, Zenna picked up something in one of the parks and she started to get really sick. The first night we woke up in the middle of the night and she was doing this choking thing. Later on we found out it was called reverse sneezing. It was basically her coughing and she couldn't breathe. We would wake up in a panic and I'd massage her throat, and then after maybe 10 minutes it would get better. It was really scary. So we took her to a couple of vets and none of them knew what was wrong with her. We kind of had to cut our trip a little bit short. We still went to most of the places we wanted to go, but we did speed down the coast to get back to Perth so that we could take her to our vet and make sure that she was okay. When we got back to Perth, our trip ended up being, I think it was 4 weeks. I honestly can't remember, 4 or 6 weeks. And we were just exhausted from the heat, the wind. Zenna was sick. We just had no clue what we were doing. When we got back to Perth, we were just pretty over it, and we were like, is this what van life is? Are we gonna be struggling for the next year or however long we decide to live in our van? We just felt defeated, and we had to spend another 2 months in Perth while Zenna got better. We got her antibiotics that we'd have to give her every day. So we think what it was kennel cough, but we're still not too sure because the vets weren't sure either. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. The day we took her into the vet in Perth, the vet noticed that her eyes were watering quite a lot. She later discovered that there was actually a piece of shell stuck in her eye because a few days earlier it was a really windy day and we were at the beach running around, and she must have got a piece of shell stuck in her eye. So she had to go under and the vet had to get it out. I felt so bad for Zenna. So yes, a few traumatic events in the first month of our trip, and we weren't sure how we were gonna do it. I feel stressed even reminiscing on those events because it was pretty hard for us, and we did struggle quite a bit. At the time, none of this was shared online, so it just looked like our trip was amazing and perfect, but we did have a lot going on behind the scenes. Continue on. We stayed in Perth for a couple months. I actually went home to Canada and visited my family for Christmas, and we started planning the next few months of our trip. We left again in February 2020. We headed down to Margaret River and Dunsborough, Esperance. We explored that whole coast and it was amazing. It was so beautiful. It was much cooler and we finally felt like this was where we were supposed to be. This is how van life is. It was just lovely, honestly. We met some amazing friends, had a bit of work online, so we were happy with that, and it was just great. As soon as we arrived in Esperance, we fell in love. We were just obsessed and we stayed there for 6 weeks. One of the biggest things we have struggled with while traveling Australia in our van with our dog is not being able to visit the national parks. This has kind of just been an issue everywhere, and we always have to either book an accommodation or find a pet sitter to look after Zenna. We hadn't even really explored any of the national parks in Esperance by the time COVID hit. We were a bit worried because we were in a smaller town, which was Esperance, so we weren't sure if the locals were going to want people who live in their van hanging around the town. At the time, we were with our friends who were from Tasmania, Dee and Brock, who also, now that I think of it, Brock was a lifesaver. During our time in Esperance, he actually installed our flexible solar panel that's now on top of the roof that now gives us enough power for everything. So that was a big highlight of our time in Esperance because since then we have not struggled with power. So yes, wanted to add that in there. One day, all of a sudden, they came back to the car park we were chilling at and they were like, "You guys, we are driving back to Tasmania and we're leaving in 30 minutes because the border's closing at 4 p.m. tomorrow and we need to get there before the border shuts to South Australia." So Jordan and I were looking at each other and we're like, well, we should probably do something about this too. We need to decide, are we gonna go back up to Perth and stay with our friends? Because obviously we didn't have an apartment anymore. We didn't have anywhere to go really. So it was either staying with them or driving across the country to Jordan's family. They're in Byron Bay and Brisbane, so we thought maybe it would be a good idea to be with family so that we have somewhere to stay, we have people to lean on. We decided to drive 3,500 kilometers across the country in one go. So, oh my god, even thinking about this, I'm just like, disaster. It was not fun, especially not in a combi. No aircon. It was hot. My butt was so sore and we were just driving every day, and we could only drive like 4 hours a day because we didn't want to overheat the engine in the combi either. I'm not sure if you would know about this, but combis are known to catch on fire, so if we overdid it, that could have happened, and we just weren't willing to take that risk. So we would drive 2 to 3 hours max in the morning at sunrise, and then we'd hang out, have a little nap, have some lunch in the day, and then we'd do another 2-3 hours in the afternoon. We mainly stayed at free camps and we did not really shower that much. I think we had 1, maybe 2 showers the whole week. That was that. We made it across the country. By the time we got there, we had to quarantine anyway, even though we made it across the border in time. It was this weird situation. On the map there was the border, but the actual border control wasn't for another 4 hours, so we technically didn't make it in time to not have to do the quarantine. We made it all the way to Glen Innes, where Jordan's sister has a farm, so it was pretty isolated, and we decided to quarantine there, which is actually quite nice because it gave us time to just get back into a routine. We could exercise, have showers, and just do all those things that we hadn't done the last week. After our 2 weeks of quarantine, we went to visit Jordan's sister, Catherine, who lives near Byron Bay. We ended up staying there for 3 months because we were non-essential travelers, so we weren't allowed to travel, and people who were traveling or leaving their house to go places were getting fines. I am so thankful that this worked out how it did because it really gave us time just to reflect and actually figure out what we wanted to do and why we were traveling and what our future would look like. So this was really good for Jordan and I to have this rest. Once people were out and about again, we hit the road and decided to explore Queensland. We were pretty pumped to be back on the road again because it had been 3 months of lockdown. By this time it was July 2020. We weren't sure how long we were going to spend in Queensland, but we just hit the road and started going and figured it out along the way. The first month was amazing because the weather was really nice. It was like sweater weather, so it wasn't too hot in the van, which I think for me, being hot is my biggest struggle living in a combi. When I'm hot, I just can't focus. I get really lazy and unmotivated, and it's just really downing and not great for my mental health. The weather affects me a lot. So when we had those really sunny days and cool nights, I was just so happy. Like every day I was like, this is the perfect van life weather. And I think that's one thing that I have learned being on the road, how important it is to chase the good weather. The beginning of our time in Queensland was when I decided to start my YouTube channel, and this was pretty exciting for me because I have always wanted to make videos, but I just haven't done it. I think that's like with a lot of people and a lot of things, you just don't have time or you prioritize other things. But I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna start filming because we're doing all these adventures and it's almost a shame to be doing all this, and obviously you have it in your memory, but to have videos of it to look back on in the future, I just think that's amazing. A couple months into doing my videos, I fell in love with videography, and I really felt like this is what I was meant to be doing. We made it all the way up the coast as far as the Daintree rainforest, so we had to take a ferry to get off the mainland across to the island, and the Daintree is such a special place. It feels like another country. I did not feel like I was in Australia, and we had the best time there. That was probably one of the highlights of Queensland for me personally. There's no phone reception up there, so just to switch off for a few days after making so many videos, creating so much content, and being online so much, it was a really good way to just completely disconnect and enjoy the nature around us. Once we got back to the mainland, a huge storm came through and there was just no escaping it. It was raining non-stop. It was wild. And we really struggled in that time because having 2 people in a small van, this is not your average van. Like a lot of Sprinter vans and buses I see people traveling with are so big compared to our combi. We really don't have much space, and once we get our fridge in here as well, that usually goes in this area that I'm sitting in, so we are left with not much space. So when the weather is good, we love our combi, but when the weather is bad, we don't love our combi. It's just a bit difficult. Once we overcame all the rainy days, we explored the waterfalls, and then once again it started to get very hot because we were coming into summer, so the days were just getting really humid, and as I mentioned earlier, I really don't do well when it's extremely hot. We decided to start heading quickly down the coast. We had a friend's wedding coming up, so that sped up our trip already quite a bit. On the way down, we had a few more mishaps. We tend to do a lot of free camping. We feel that we have everything we need. We have power, there's tons of public toilets around here in Australia. There's always a place to find a shower. We have gym memberships and we use the beach showers, so that's just never really an issue for us. Of course, it's more effort living in a van, but we don't feel like we need to stay at caravan parks too often. So on the way down, we were at a spot called Hideaway Bay. This was probably the first time this happened. It was 2 a.m. and all of a sudden a really bright light was flashing in our van. It ended up being a security man, so what they do in the Whitsundays region is they pay security who come around at night, so it's different than rangers. Lucky for us, he was really nice and he said, hey, if you guys are just up really early, leave in the morning, I won't give you a fine. So we were very thankful for that because we were just up anyway, and we were like, let's just leave this spot, because when you're in a spot that you get those vibes, that you're not wanted there, it's just not a good feeling. So we just continued on down the coast. A few nights later, we camped in a little bit of a silly spot and we got a $267, I think it was, fine in the Whitsundays region as well. So then we continued on down the coast and we had the biggest breakdown probably that we've ever had. This could have ended really bad and really expensive, but we just so happened to be in a spot called Mattea where our friend Bonnie, who also has a combi, lives. We met Bonnie in Esperance the year before. Her dad and her brother are very handy with combis, and it just so happened that they came and helped us out and basically saved us, because I don't know how much money that would have been otherwise or where we would have ended up, but we were very thankful to have them. They just brought us in, they made us dinner, and they were so kind to us. I really love that about the van life community. Everybody just wants to be there for each other and help each other out. We also had another guy who we just met a few days before. He also had a little VW Beetle and some combis. He also helped us with some parts and did as much as he could to get us back on the road, so that was very nice. It was so wild because we actually needed to get a part out of Bonnie's combi that we needed changing, so because we had somewhere to be, we had to order it in. We took Bonnie's part, and then when we got back, we gave her part back and switched our new part in. Like, just the fact that she let us use a part out of her combi, we just felt so blessed. That was the rest of our mishaps throughout Queensland. I don't think we had anything else happen. We did a big drive to get back down to Byron in time for our friend's wedding, and since then we have been exploring New South Wales and a little bit of Queensland. We're now on the Gold Coast and we're working for a few months because we also need to make money so that we can afford to travel. We work really hard so that we can travel, and to be honest, I spend all my money on travel and photography gear, and that's basically it. We can't wait to be back on the road in a few months. So if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope I didn't bore you, and I hope that you got something out of this video that you can take away for your own future adventures. I hope that you'll follow along our journey and that you'll have some adventures of your own. Bye bye.